Hello everybody. I'm going out here and try to get some bait to go fishing. It's been about 100 degrees, low 90s now for about at least a week or two. And I'm going to go out and get some bait that I call horseweed worms. If you look up on the internet and look for horseweeds, you're not going to find these things. They're not really horseweeds. They're actually giant ragweeds. So I'm going to turn the camera around and just get right to it. Alright, out here at the edge of my property where the sun shines, not in the trees, I saw some horseweeds. I call them horseweeds, sorry. But whenever I say horseweeds, I mean giant ragweeds. Years ago, we always called them horseweed worms. You talk to somebody that's in their 70s and say horseweed worms, don't know what they're talking about. But they're not really horseweeds. They're giant ragweeds. There's a difference between a ragweed and a giant ragweed. There's one right there. See those tallest weeds? They're usually the tallest weeds around the edge of crops. Sometimes it's hard to find them because, well, honestly, because the farmers spray everything and kill everything. There's some catalpa trees I planted a few years ago, hoping that I'd get some catalpa worms, but no such luck. Anyway, we're going to go through here. I'm going to get out here where there's some light. These are okay right there. Those are giant ragweeds. It's hard for me to even say it. But that's what they're called. If you got hay fever, you might want to not mess around with these things later on in the year, because then they start to make a green blossom. Like, let's see what these look like. I don't know if there's any horseweeds in these, or worms. I call them horseweed worms. They're not worms. They're actually a larva. So I usually just look down here. I'm looking for any stem that has something wrong with it. These are all real healthy. They don't have any worms in them, as luck would have it. I'll edit out some of this looking. The other day I walked out here and the first thing I saw was one with a gall on it. Okay, so that one there has a small knot on it. You see that? I'm going to go ahead and pull that weed. Okay, you see that right there? That's hollow in there. And there's actually should be a larva living in there, living off of this weed. Let me go ahead and put the camera down for a minute and bust this open so I can pull it open. Okay, so now try to hold this camera still. See him in there? Later on, that larva will get 2 or 3 times as big as that. When they're multicolored like this, you can catch fish on them, but they're soft, and you can only catch about 1 fish per worm or larva. See them? They're very lively. Like I say, this was a real small one. There's what he looks like. Look real close at him. I usually just hook them right below the head. Let them dangle on a very small hook. And that's a good bait. I've caught almost every kind of fish that I've ever fished for on them. I don't think I've ever caught a pike on them. They'll pinch you once in a while with the big ones. This one here's, he doesn't know what to do because I took him out of his house. I'm gonna go ahead and drop him in here. Okay, now here's one that's a little further along. I had him in his bucket in the refrigerator the other day when I first went out here to look to see if there were any. He's real dormant right now because he's so cold. That's how I keep them, just like most larva bait. I put a little bit of dirt just to cover them up. If I'm going to go fishing right away, a lot of times if I find a bunch of these, I'll just cut the stem and not even look in the hole. I just take the stems with me. They keep really well that way. That's as simple as it is. You need a bucket, a knife, and find some giant ragweeds. They'll be in these ragweeds, I'm estimating about 3 to 4 weeks once you start finding them. But once they turn almost all white and that's when I really like them. They get tough. But utilize them when you can get them, because once they turn white, they won't be in there very long. Okay, so this is pretty typical. One there, one there, one there, one there. They're just starting to get big enough to use. What I'll do is I'll cut this about here in between the holes. I'll try not to cut through the worm, and then I'll just stick this in my bucket. And when I want to use them, I'll just cut them open. This will kind of keep them alive. They'll stay in this weed for quite a while, even though the weed's been cut. Simple, huh? That's what to look for. Just get on and just start driving around, and along the road is where I see them usually. You'll see, and they don't. It's easier to find them if there's not like hundreds of these weeds. If they're scattered, because then whatever stings these, whatever lays that larva egg in there, I believe, like this weed, this giant ragweed was kind of all by itself here. You see right here's where I picked it, and you don't see any. So whatever that was that wanted to lay that egg was buzzing along, and there it is. So he did it all in that one. I've already found a dozen or so in a big, you find one of these, a big plant like this. Some of them are so big that they have stems or almost like limbs on trees, and they've actually stung the limbs too. But like I say, this is very typical. Like I say, I cut them up. That larva will stay in there even though it's been cut up. Go out and have some fun. Okay, so into the refrigerator they go. This is my bait refrigerator. And that'll keep them kind of in suspended animation. So that's my story. I'm sticking with it. Oop, can't. Yeah, it's a little crooked there. Crooked head. Okay, well, go out there and get yourself some. I hate to say it. I call them horseweed worms, but you can call them whatever you want. I call them a damn good bait. Have a good summer.